Huge thank you to CIBC for making We Get It possible. Hello, everyone. My name is Karine. I'm the program director with Young Adult Cancer Canada. I am so thrilled to be here with you again this week for another episode of We Get It. We Get It is a weekly series on the web, comes live on Facebook every Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern, and lives on our YouTube channel at Young Adult Cancer Canada, well, youngadultcancer.ca. I think that's the YouTube channel, or that's the website. You can find us. And we have people and different guests from survivors, health professionals, friends and colleagues, researchers who talk about things that are relevant to the young adult population and the reality of getting cancer as a young adult. And this week, I'm happy and lucky once again to be with my friend and colleague, Genevieve Stonebridge, who is a counselor at InspireHealth in Victoria. Genevieve was with us a few weeks ago where we talked about self-compassion, which I know many of you have really loved. And with Genevieve, which we actually might get to come back again in 2021, we're focusing a little bit on wellness. So as you will see, we spoke of self-compassion first, and today we're going to spend some time talking about creativity. So that's going to be how we're going to take care of each other today with Genevieve, is having a chat about creativity and cancer and all kinds of things. Genevieve, thank you for being with me again. How are you?
I am very grateful. Nice to be here and so excited to talk about this really, I think, nourishing, inspiring topic of creativity, and hopeful for any of you who are listening, if you are feeling any sort of trepidation around creativity, that maybe we can bust some of those barriers and walls down. For those of you who are like, I love creativity, then hope we just sort of fan the flames of your creative juices.
Yes, definitely. I see that you are in your beautiful home office with all these colorful books behind you, which someone in a previous episode had noticed how they are color coded and color organized. So it is pretty impressive. So for those of you who are listening and not watching, there is this big bookshelf with purple books and blue books and orange books and red and yellow, and they're all organized, which gives me a little bit of organization envy. I love that. I'm in my home office, which really is a bedroom. Let's be honest. It's a bedroom, but there's a desk and I do love it and it's cozy. So let's jump in and have a start. Let's first maybe go to what is it? What is creativity? What are we talking about here?
Yeah. So I think one of the places like this is just an important place to start, and why it matters. So within the context of Inspire Health, where I work as a clinical counselor, sort of everybody on the team, I think, is looking for ways to support patients to their overall well-being, to their overall ideal health. And that can look like so many different things for all of us. And creativity can come into play, I think, in every avenue of our health. So as a counselor, I'm looking at it from ways, obviously, of the mental and emotional health, but our whole team actually does, which is really beautiful. So whether it's in the kitchen with dietitians or with the doctors or with exercise, there's lots of different ways we can infuse creativity to help us in our overall vision of our health. And so really wanting to define that creativity isn't maybe what you're thinking if you're trying to define creativity as art. That's sometimes what we think. Creativity is art. Creativity is I have to be able to paint a picture. No, and we want to really redefine that here and sort of saying that creativity is a way of seeing the world. And really, quite simply put, it can be a way of seeing something and a possibility when maybe you didn't think there was before. One definition of creativity that I really love is interpreting something you saw or experienced and then processing it so it comes out different than how it went in. And as a counselor, that's a huge thing of what we do with life experiences, of how we experience something and then try and interpret it differently, maybe in a way that can be more supportive processing for us.
Yes, I love that because I feel I've heard and said myself, but I've heard many, many times people say, oh, I'm not creative. let's say more, I have some of my beautiful colleagues and friends, they're more type A, they're very organized, they can create a spreadsheet with formulas I will never understand. And they'll often, I'm not creative. And to me, it's like, no, you so are. You actually are able to look at situations and think of a way to make things flow and go that I wouldn't have thought of. And it is so clever. And it is so, and I think to your point, creativity is many things. And when we accept that and actually acknowledge our own, the existence of our own creativity, I'm like, man, possibilities are infinite, really.
Yeah, I love, yeah, thank you for speaking to that, because I think that is so many of our ways of coming at creativity, is a thinking that we aren't. And then you're pointing out all the ways that almost every single one of us, I mean, I think really we all are. However, we take care of ourselves. For example, the way we choose to dress ourselves. I chose to wear yellow today on purpose. I think that's a creative act, how we dress ourselves and comb our hair, the way in which we feed ourselves, and really the way in which we look at the world. So yes, it can be the creation of art, absolutely, of painting or making jewelry, or, you know, as some of our yakkers have done, of the creation of clothing and logos and all of these different ways of expressing ourselves. But it can also be, like you said, in an Excel spreadsheet, to create something and see a way, possibility through it. It can be the way we decorate our homes.
Yeah.
It can be the way we speak to one another. Can be the way in which we tell a joke. I mean, we know that so many people in our community really try and turn to humor at times to make sense of a difficult time. And I think that is a creative process. You know, kind of like that general definition I gave by Henry Rollins is like, take something and change it and give it a different meaning, where being funny, being humorous, is a form of creativity.
Yeah, storytelling. Like we have so many of our community members who
Yep.
share their stories, and many again often at first will say, I don't know, will people find that relevant? And yeah, stories are amazing, and learning through stories of others, because you can discover how people live their lives, how they make their choices, how they, and that is creativity to me. It's creating your life and then letting others see it.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant example. And I think, you know, something that has been really interesting through, I mean, we're talking about the cancer experience, but also through this pandemic, I think creativity has been a lifesaver for so many of us to take care of ourselves. And we've had to get really creative about how to connect. I mean, here we are, we're on this platform through creative ingenuity of, okay, how do we stay connected? And been a lot of neat creativity that has come out of difficult times, maybe part of the silver linings. You know, seeing people turning, for example, to gardening. I mean, I think the process of being with plants is a creative act. If we think of starting with a seed and seeing how it changes and transforms and blooms, like,
Yeah.
it's, to me, mind-blowing. So all these ways, you know, people choosing and finding ways of how to stay connected through, when we did the Yacker conference and talked about creativity, people were sending their ideas in, and these really cool things around being pen pals. So going back to letter writing, for example,
Yeah.
like lots of really neat ways in which we're staying connected through creativity.
Yes, toilet paper, little characters. Someone did
Yeah.
that, you remember?
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
So one of the things I wanted to share today that I think maybe help introduce myself to some of you who I haven't met, and share with you, Karine, because I don't think I've ever shared this with you, is actually why creativity is so important to me, not only as a counselor, as a human being, also as somebody who has lived through cancer. And what I realized in thinking about doing this chat with you is actually creativity has been a real coping lifesaver and sort of instrument of understanding for me from the very beginning. And that's, I think it's part of how I was raised, but it became a huge part of my experience, which was a long time ago. It was 19 years ago that I was diagnosed, but it has stayed a constant force throughout my life of how I've taken care of myself. And so I just wanted to share a few of the ways that I've used creativity, and then we're going to talk about some of the benefits and how it's so relevant to our YAC community, especially with some of those findings from the YAC Prime study, trying to speak to some of those areas which we know are present for our people, depression, anxiety, body image issues, and things like that, where creativity can be really instrumental in helping us to deal with some of these difficult life experiences.
Yes, please share. Yay!
Okay. Just gonna bring up my slideshow.
There it is.
All right, here we go. So this is a page from my journal. I'm 18 years old and I am sitting in the chemo ward and I am talking to myself, I'm talking to my body, I'm talking to my hair. And I remember writing this. I was also listening to music. I was listening to some Destiny's Child, Survivor, and really trying to help myself in a very uncomfortable experience. And I look back on this and I am so grateful to whoever introduced this idea and encouraged me to take my journal. And neat thing is, and we'll speak to this a bit shortly, but the research points to some really neat studies around offering creative opportunities to people specifically during treatment can be really helpful in lowering stress and anxiety. And so there I was, my own little research study of one, actually feeling that positive effect. And I'm doing an affirmation there for my hair. I didn't want to lose my hair. I had long hair like this. I did lose a lot of my hair. I had a lot of fluff, but not all of it. So it's just a little way in which I used creativity through journaling. So journaling is a way. Music. I think something also important to think about is that in creativity, it doesn't always have to be the creation of it. It can also be the appreciation of others' art and creativity.
The enjoyment, music. Oh my God, one of my favorite ever thing.
And me too. Music, I have more and more just such a deeper appreciation for it. These are some pieces later on, as I mentioned, art and making sense of my mortality and the way cancer's impacted my life has been a lifelong journey. So this is a printmaking piece that I did called Adios Cancer. And so you can see wiping, I imagined with each treatment, I was wiping cancer out of my body. So you can see the word disappearing. And then in 2010, 10 years ago, I did this project in an applied theater class where we created, and this is a neat sort of step in my evolution with creativity, is actually reaching out to others in the community. And we interviewed cancer survivors, took all of their stories, braided them together and created a piece for them about their experience called Are You Sitting Down? So theater can be a way. Storytelling, as Karine said, a way of expressing ourselves. And then that connection piece, because creativity can sometimes be very insular, but also the expression of the sharing and the learning for others. That's been part of my experience as well. And then just want to share these last two examples. And this is called a body map. So I created this shape outside my body, and underneath literally are maps of places I've been and lived in the world. And then an homage of thanks to my body, to all the parts of my body that have carried me through the world or struggled at times. So art actually helped me to see my body in a different way, to speak to my body in a different way. This can be also, I think, a helpful practice for us when we can feel a lot of grief around how our health changes, and the power of gratitude, I think, of coming home to ourselves.
I love this. I feel like this activity could be something nice to do with a supporter, like someone who's helping, and they could trace your body shape on a sheet, and to work with someone, to have someone do it with you, and then together having this kind of, because for those who are listening, like you see this tracing of a body on a big map, really, and you have like different parts, and you have thank you written on a cardboard or something in the middle. But I think this could be a really neat activity to do with someone.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for bringing that point in. Absolutely something we can share. And I think too, not to put too much expectation on ourselves too. These are ideas. and just to share with you what has been helpful for me. And that's where I think creativity can be, really life-changing for us, is it can give us words and help us see things when sometimes just our words and speaking alone can't help us understand and process. And then this is my last example here. This is a sculpture activity where I had to build different things out of using only cardboard. And so there is an anatomical heart and a lung and some feet. And so this was also an exploration in the body of really starting to learn about the incredible force that is my body and its ability to heal after going through so much. So I wrapped them all up in gifts and created this as my body as a present, as a gift.
Nice. I love this. Yeah, and I think that's it. We can see just by these few examples how varied this can be. And you can collaborate with others. You can mix different art, spectrums. You can create something from scratch. You can just use words. You can use your thoughts, I think. Like, there are so many different ways to actually just practice creativity.
Yeah, absolutely. Writing is a huge one.
Right.
So, wanting to talk now a bit about what some of the barriers and the helpers for our creativity would be, because some of you might be looking at these and being like, I can't do that, or I don't want to do that, and that's okay. And some of you might be like, okay, chomping at the bit, you want to get into this. So I think, one of the important things that has been helpful to me is to really think about kind of what are some of the stories we've been told about creativity, and really knowing that all of us are infinitely creative, and there's just stories that have been told to us, whether through our family or through education, about whether we are creative or not. Mm-hmm. And there's a lovely quote by Pablo Picasso that says, "Every child is born an artist, and the problem is how to stay an artist when we grow up."
Yes, true that, Pablo.
True that, yeah. So some of I call them the thieves of creativity. One of the biggest ones, self-judgment. Yep. I'm not good at this. Perfectionism. Oh, it has to look a certain way. Thinking there's these specific rules or right way to do things. Analyzing. Sometimes when we're exhausted, like if you're looking at this and feeling exhausted, it can be hard to imagine, where am I going to get the energy to do this? Mm-hmm. And just that like basic place of fear, like what if it sucks? Mm-hmm. So how to meet all those places and pieces. So those are kind of our thieves of creativity. Would you add anything to that, Karine? Like what do you know for you, like what gets in the way of your creativity?
I think sometimes, like less now because I've made a mindful, like conscious choice to change that. But I think sometimes not associating certain things to being creative kind of almost blocked my creativity. It blocked any possibility for things to continue to evolve and be leading me towards a new idea, new understanding. Like, let's say journaling. I think at first when I used to journal, I had no idea that this was actually being creative and giving me possibilities to change some things, or maybe to think or dream differently. And so that sometimes I would judge myself, but sometimes not understanding that I was actually being creative in the moment stopped me from exploring further.
Yeah, the limited sort of thinking of what it looks like. So hopefully we're blowing those walls off, our beliefs and definitions. Yeah, blowing them out of the water, mixing them metaphors. And one of the things for me sometimes is just the mindful awareness of time. So how to slow down enough and breathe in a moment of putting my socks on and see, oh yeah, this too is an act of creativity. Oh, in a moment in the morning, like choosing to put a song on or some music on so I can hear some music to help carry me in that moment can just change a moment. So sometimes for me, it's about time and awareness of in the moment. Any moment can be infused with creativity.
Yes.
So our friends of creativity, this idea of awareness of sort of changing our thinking, self-compassion, being kind to ourselves, be as encouraging to yourself as you would be to a friend in their attempts to be creative. Meditating, mindfulness, there's so much cool research around how helpful that is for creativity. Being willing to make mistakes. enjoying creating simply for creating, not worrying about the product, being with the process. Kids are really helpful because often if you think back to what did you love doing as a kid, and then being inspired by other kids, you give kids, some colors or markers and ask them to be creative. It's like, yeah.
There you go.
And adults, yeah. And adults, we go, ugh. So kids can really inspire us of how to just play. And play is really helpful. Laughter and just trusting that if you're not prepared to be wrong, you'll never come up with anything original. So trying to surrender a bit of our fear.
Yes.
And then out of all of these, do you have anything to add to that or wonderings about that of friends of creativity?
No, I'm just seeing in my head all kinds of moments at retreats where we would do an art activity, and everything that you just said, we would see in different people, like the wanting to be perfect, people completely unable to start because they wanted to find the perfect image, and so all of that I've seen. And then we've seen some of the most beautifully weird and creative things come out of people to express something that really, that's where they brought it, that's where they went. I was just thinking of that and seeing retreats, and I was like, yeah, all of that we see all the time in adults.
Yeah, I love those real specific examples. And I can think of a retreat moment like that, and like when the person just sort of surrendered themselves to just have fun, and then how pleased they were with what they created in the end. It's such a beautiful transformation that happens, and it often takes practice of that kind of letting ourselves go, because all of us have at some point been criticized for our creative expression, whether told not to sing, oh, keep your voice low, you've got the squeaky voice in choir, or you look silly dancing, or that doesn't look like what you're trying to draw. And there's so much criticism that goes
Coloring
in.
outside the lines, I'm like, seriously, I'm a kid, give me a break. But those comments, which are never meant, I don't think, to hurt any, but it's just, and then all of a sudden it becomes essential to color inside the lines. And then when you're not good at it, well, chances are you might not color as much as you used to. And it's like, it's simple, but just,
Yeah.
Who cares about the lines?
Exactly. So if we can be aware of, wow, what is it that makes me kind of blocked to this, it can help us then to meet ourselves with a bit more kindness and try and abandon some of that into the freedom of just creative expression.
Yes.
And the benefits of all this, and why the heck we're talking about it, and why it's so important to all of you, whether living with or beyond cancer, or supporting and loving somebody with cancer. The benefits is some of those things I've already spoken to around stress reduction. So hugely helpful, in some studies around lowering cortisol levels, measuring sort of pre-states of anxiety, depression before creativity, and afterwards, showing really positive results in that direction. Even just, with my example I gave there, really have noticed that in myself, and that's, study of one anecdotally, but the research is pointing to similar pieces. And this, I think, so important, when we're dealing with difficult life circumstances, is expressing it, not keeping it all locked inside. And for some of us, words to express ourselves is really hard. Yeah. So maybe we find a way to express it through movement. Maybe we find a way to write a piece of music. I've been deeply touched by different patients I've supported and people I love in facing their health and illness, and choosing to create music as a way of speaking and finding words, or a way of expressing when words can't.
Yes.
So self-expression is so important for our overall well-being.
Yeah, photography. We have amazing photographers in our community. Like, there's so many people who are crazy talented without even trying, and without maybe even knowing sometimes. But I think a lot of the cancer experience has been expressed in a lot of ways within our community.
Yeah. And I think, one of the things I was thinking about of a real benefit is it helps with grief. So life is grief. There is so much about life. There is grief when we say goodbye to someone we love because they die. There is that kind of grief I'm speaking to. And there's also the grief and the loss of change and all the changes that we go through in being a human being. and in being a human being touched and impacted by cancer. And so art, creative expression, can help us to make meaning of that and help us to find a way through it and beyond it. You know, and I've seen that in some of the ways all of you have honored those who have passed away, who have died, in honoring them through creative acts. Deeply touching. And I think that that's also how we can live on through music, through memory, through art, and just so helpful. And that's, I think, a huge part of why I share a bit of my personal story, is that has helped, and why I surround myself in color. It helps me to feel alive. And cancer certainly brings us to that awareness that we are alive and we are mortal. And I think creativity is a way of expressing our aliveness.
Yes.
So a few of the other benefits, like as I mentioned, going beyond words, helping with stress reduction, awakening curiosity, the awareness to in decreasing anxiety, particularly before treatments. So many patients have talked to me about using music to listen to going into treatment, and visualization. It's a creative process and practice to help just settle. It doesn't make it all better. It just helps us to feel a bit more grounded and sometimes a little bit more in control when we can feel totally out of control. Music in my ears, the visualization I'm taking with me into radiation or chemo or a surgery can be really empowering for us and help in our healing and help in our just everyday living.
Yeah. And I feel like so many of our community members, and I know this is true for any age, but within our YAC community, and I'm sure the young adults within InspireHealth, when I think of certain moments, and you go through a lot of, scanxiety and having to go for treatment or having to go after the results for some tests. And I've been thinking, and some might do it, but a part of me, like I like to write sometimes intentions and how I want either my day to go or certain things to go. And even associating writing while listening to specific songs and writing how you want for certain things to go, and then listening to that song as you are back in treatment to kind of help yourself make connections between moments, because you might not have your journal at the hospital during treatment to read things that are soothing, but this song that you listened to while you were doing that process, that can follow you. And I think for us to help ourselves have those links, like carrying a rock or anything that is reminding you of something, these are all ways, I think, to help with the challenges and the demands that comes with cancer.
Beautiful, exactly. And those little touchstone reminders, like exactly, we might not be able to have the journal there, but if we're doing it beforehand, we can tap into it. And some of the neat research actually about music, and there's a researcher, his name is Daniel Levitin, and he has done a lot of really interesting research around music, and noting that there is evidence that playing and listening to music can actually boost our immune system and reduce stress, and actually finding that sometimes listening to music before surgery can be more effective than prescription drugs in reducing patients' anxiety beforehand, which is pretty profound. Yeah. The one caveat in that I've been reading about is that, if you're thinking, okay, what's the song I'm supposed to listen to? What is this song? There is some research around specific kind of music and the hertz and the levels that they're being played at. But really, most importantly, is finding the music that you like and love. Like some of us in this room might really get jazzed up by The Boss.
I hear some people do, apparently.
Some people like Corinne really love Bruce Springsteen. Now, some people like Genevieve might not get jazzed up by Bruce Springsteen. Maybe it's more of a Beyonce dance party or some really soothing jazz music. So the one thing that's really important is that it's not prescriptive. It's really finding what is the music that causes us to feel calm or clarity or aliveness, and then picking it for the right moment, because we can't listen to Beyonce in every moment or The Boss in every moment. Sometimes we're going to need to have some gentle meditation music too. So just that little piece there of awareness of finding the music that suits you.
And recognizing, I feel like we said that, you and I, when we were talking about self-compassion, but sometimes things are quite simple, and simple things can actually really help. And recognizing in the moment the benefits that we can gain from certain practices, from acknowledging and honoring our creativity in choosing a song before, that also makes a difference. You know, sometimes it helps to stop and say, I know I'm doing this with intention, and I know that it's going to help me, instead of kind of being on automatic pilot and kind of not necessarily connecting
Yes.
some of the decisions and things we do. I think that makes a difference as well.
And speaks beautifully to my last piece here around the importance of mindfulness, really. And so intention is a really powerful word. When we can drop expectation puts pressure on ourselves. Expecting myself, I'll do this, I'm going to feel better. Drop that. The intention is how to settle, how to soften, and just to explore what this might feel like. Who knows? And so if I could, I might infuse a little practice here. Would that be okay? Is good timing?
Yes, it's perfect timing.
Okay. So just as a sort of takeaway piece is a mindful activity, and hopeful this might be accessible for all of us, given that all of our bodies have different abilities. And it's called, in some settings, we call it 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And it's a using all of our senses, or maybe just one at a time, to help settle into the moment, but actually bringing some creative practice to it. So if you have a pen or a pencil, or maybe a felt pen, it can be anything, and a piece of paper, I'm going to ask you to get that now. So just give people a moment here to grab your pens and paper. And Karine is going to do it with me.
Yes, I will.
Yes, you will. And just taking a nice mindful deep breath in. And while breathing mindfully like this, what that helps us to do is really activate our parasympathetic nervous system, or that part of our body that can kind of move into rest and digest. That helps to kind of unlock our creativity. If we're really super stressed and tight, it's hard to relax into creativity and problem solving. So just some nice, slow, deep breaths. You might even close your eyes. And then thinking of this point that Karine made around being present with what we're doing and the intention to it, just invite you to, if you have a bit availability of sight, just looking around your space right now. And knowing that for some of our listeners, sight might not be available. So also taking in with sound. So you might be observing with sight or with sound. So you might be noticing, like I noticed there's a candle beside me. I notice there's a butterfly on my wall. So just noticing and not going into a whole story, just noticing. Maybe I hear my heater. I hear the traffic on the road. And maybe you notice touch as well. So I can feel my fingertips to thumb. What about you, Karine? What are you hearing and noticing? Seeing and feeling?
And I'm in my room all the time, but I don't know. I kind of notice as there's a lot of color here. So, you know, I have a world map made of different colors in front of me, and also hearing the very constant, it's super quiet in my house, but the constant heater sound. So it's this constant vibration, uh, and looking at the light at this time of day. So those are just kind of things I notice. And my fingers, they're super soft. I guess my skin was really dry lately, and it's really soft today.
Thank you for noticing it.
Mhm.
And so to all of you, whatever you're noticing at home, just going to invite you to go to your paper now and write one of your observations of one thing you see, maybe one thing you smell or taste. We can add that sense in here as well if it's available to you. And one thing you hear, one thing you touch. You can kind of pick one of them and then maybe sketch it out just for fun. We'll just take a minute or so, but this can be a long practice. This can be a nice like 15-minute journaling.
Yeah. So you said we can look at something we saw, something we heard, something we taste, hear, touch. This is where we're going, right?
Yeah. So just writing down or drawing or both. I see, I hear, I smell or taste, I touch, I feel. You can maybe you just do one. Maybe you're just juicy about one of them. So I'm just going to do one more here.
And you draw something? Is that
yeah,
what
you can draw if you want. You can have a little image. And then, are you ready?
Oh, I'm trying not to judge myself as we speak.
Perfect.
And I'm trying not to judge my drawing as we speak. And I'm ready.
Okay. So for those of you who are listening or just watching, we've sped this up for, interest of timing, but you could take like a full 15 minutes with this to really dig in of just observing what you see and what you hear and what you touch, but then putting it to paper. And so what did you come up with, Karine? Are you feel comfortable sharing with the screen?
This is just like a little section of my
okay,
map.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Newfoundland is here. So, yeah, so that's what I drew. That's what I had time to draw.
I love it. I love it. So Karine drew her map of the world, and I did a quick like 5-minute sketch of, oh, I've done this before. So I see the candle. I tasted my tea. I can feel my hands. I see Karine. This is a Zoom screen, as you can see.
I'm in Zoom Square there. All right.
Gentleness, people. I hear So this is a really nice mindfulness activity when we're feeling actually quite stressed. It can be helpful, but it's also a fun way to just sort of dive into a creative practice and explore seeing our world. And it can be a something we can do by writing down, but we also can just engage in our world through 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And our breath.
And our breath. I love this. I have like one thing sometimes I like to do if I'm on a meeting or if is sometimes to have rocks in my hands. Softer ones, but sometimes I'll just play it, and it's tactile, and I guess it brings you back in the moment. But I think we all have, of course, to Genevieve's point, there might be time, or even like you might not have access to all your senses, but I think there are always some place we can go that can kind of help us be in the present moment, use what's around us. Like we're surrounded by all kinds of things in nature. We didn't talk about nature today, but being outside is magic when it comes to nature, smell and touch and
and if we need to bring it in, then it's through visualization. If we're not able to get out into it, then we can also activate our senses through visualization. I mean, that's a whole other conversation, but that's where creativity can take us from our place here and into other areas of the world that maybe we can't travel to right now, but we can in our mind's eye.
Thank you, Genevieve. Of course, these are snapshots. Like these episodes of We Get It, we know are not able to go as deep as we want, but we will have an opportunity to do that, I'm sure. And for today, I hope that our conversation around creativity, the ways you are creative, some of the thieves of creativity, because sometimes they're thieves of joy, but there's some of creativity as well, are going to help you maybe push a little bit of those barriers and obstacles and experiment, try it out, and leave aside the desire of perfection. And you know what? If you do it just for yourself so that nobody else is gonna see it, what's the limit? You know, they say dance like nobody's looking. Well,
Yeah.
be creative like nobody's looking, because it's about you. It's not about everybody else. It's about you. And if you get to a good place and a good relationship with being a creative being, it's going to have beautiful positive repercussion on your surroundings, your relationships, people. That's kind of how it goes. Thank you, Genevieve, for your wisdom and your creativity and your colorful, shiny light. As usual, it was awesome. Thank you. And for the rest of you, Genevieve said it at the end, like breathe, just breathe. Every Monday, I remind everyone, just breathe all,
And
all the time.
and if I can just add a little note
Yes.
there, if we're breathing, we're being, and if you want to continue this exploration, invite you, if you want to come check out any of our workshops at InspireHealth. We have a counseling team that really infuses creativity into all our workshops that are generally on Wednesdays. But just remembering, like Karine said, drop the perfectionism and play. Have fun. And I'd love to, if any of you are inspired by this and you want to email me, get Karine to put my email in the conversation, but would love to hear the ways that creativity is helping you, because we can really be inspired by one another. And I hope today there's been some snippets of inspiration, and I will leave on a quote, because I love quotes. That's one of my ways of being creative in the world. And this is from the artist Georgia O'Keeffe. And she says, "I found that I could say things with color and shapes that I couldn't say any other way. Things I had no words for." So may you go into your day and find colors and shapes to help express however you are doing. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for this. Thank you, everyone. And we will see you hopefully next week. Okay, bye.